Hiya BookTube, and welcome to something completely different, including a completely different background. As you can see, this is much better than what you normally get from Heather Reads, right? But also, I'd really like to introduce my friend, Georgie.
Hello?
Some of you will recall that I've mentioned Georgie in a number of videos, and in fact, the last time that I mentioned her was in connection with her film knowledge. To recap, Georgie is to film what I am to books, right? She loves films. She loves to talk about films. She has an amazing sort of back catalog kind of mind for film trivia. And every now and again, my interest in books and her interest in films dovetails. And that's what happened this month when Dune 2 came to cinemas. I hadn't seen Dune 1 when it first came out only because I hadn't read the book. But in my local cinema, they were re-showing Dune 1. And so I caught up with that in February. And then Georgie and I, we went to see Dune 2 on the 1st of March when it came out in UK cinemas. And we've been talking about the movie ever since. And so it was Georgie who suggested, well, why don't we revisit our conversation and give it to you guys on BookTube? So that's what we're going to do. But before we get started, spoiler alert sign is up. And it has to be because Georgie and I, we get really excited. We've been friends for a long time. We get excited about the subjects that excite us. And we couldn't possibly control what we say about the Dune films or Frank Herbert's novel. So please prepare yourself accordingly. Okay, if you want to have all the surprises, then just park up this video and watch it later. Also, please, because we've known each other so well, I can't guarantee that there won't be some colorful language. I was trying to find a lovely euphemism. That's the best euphemism I've got. We are two adults who have talked together a lot, so you might expect some stuff. So just prepare yourself for that and possible spoilers. So anybody not wanting spoilers or me to show off some four-letter English words that I know, park up this video now. Okay, well, we're going to start out and just go really broad brush, Jackie. So I'm going to just say you tell me your thoughts about the film overall.
As you said, I watch a lot of films. I tend to, I go to the cinema a lot, have a cinema pass, so a lot of big budget, the adventures and the superhero ones you get now. So you approach this sort of wondering how it's going to compare. I approached the Dune films only knowing the David Lynch version, which I'd seen a few years ago, but don't know anything about the book. So, I saw the first film, was interested, wanted to see the second one. As you say, we saw it together, and we saw it in IMAX, which I think was very important because it was able to give the scenery a chance to be a character in its own right, which I think is so important. The film's called Dune, but it's important. The actual environment impacts on so much of what's happening in the film. I just found, I watch a lot of films, and quite often you find in these epics, there's a fight scene that goes on 5 minutes too long, or there's an action sequence, and you're like, yeah, right, you've got a new gadget to make things happen or make these monsters, but you're not engaging me. I'm bored. I didn't find in any of this film there was a scene that was too long or something that you could have taken out of the film and it wouldn't have made any difference. I didn't think there was a minute that was wasted. That's what I came away with. I had one little tiny gremlin on one bit of the storyline where something happened, and it did. The only time it jolted me. So, ironically, it's actually where I felt something was missing, rather than there being too much there. And it was the scene where obviously Paul's with the Fremen. He's trying to prove himself, and the people are they accepting him as this Messiah character? And he has to. There's this big scene about him going into the desert overnight
for like a trial or something.
Yeah, it's like some sort of trial, and it's built up quite big. And then the next scene you see is Chani's sort of sneaked her way in to find him, which I thought, okay, that shows the growing relationship. I understand that. Maybe she's going to sneak out. and then the next minute they're onto a completely different scene where she's showing him round the
Oh yeah.
the site, I
Mm-hmm.
think, where they get the water from. And I was a bit like, well, hang on a minute, this bit was supposed
Yes.
to be
Oh.
so pivotal and so important to a part of his, and obviously there's the biblical connotation of going into the wilderness.
Yes.
And then it just seemed to be built up and then just fell away. And that's the only time throughout the whole film when I was brought back to reality or was
Yeah.
jolted to be like, oh, well, what's going on? You
Yeah.
know? Huh?
Well,
Yeah,
where
that
you
kind of
suddenly
thing.
thought, hey, director.
Yeah, you're missing. You're not
You're
telling
missing.
me something. You've built this section up to be one of these things of how he's winning the Fremen over
Yeah.
and how they're making him to believe he is the chosen one, and then you suddenly take that away.
Then you take that away, yeah.
And just plonk you in a different environment. You're a bit like,
Yeah.
I don't get this, because for me that was the beginning of the relationship between him and Chanya, that she'd maybe gone against what should have happened to be like, I'm going to go and help him because he's not going to survive, and that kind of thing. But then it was, for me, that just felt like there should have been another part to that. There was sort of no follow up.
Well, we certainly should have known, shouldn't we, whether Paul passed or failed?
Yeah.
And we didn't really.
No.
We just and it's funny that had completely escaped.
Yeah.
You know,
Because there's
I did not
obviously
catch
another big test that we will be discussing later on that is done in its entirety, and from what you've said to me, flips it and adds information that you didn't have before.
Well,
but with this one, I just felt, nah, what have I missed? You know, did I doze off for 2 minutes?
Well, exactly.
But no, that's really being nitpicky. That is the only, everything else
you
I felt was, and I have not approached this as a fan of the book or trying to be, well, I'm going to like it because it's X, like you get sometimes with some people that are into a certain author or a range of films. They'll be, I'm going to like it come hell or high water. It's like, no, I approach this with a fresh pair of eyes and just, okay, let's see what you're going to do. But yeah, I do not think there was a second that was not needed or that was wasted.
Interesting. Now, it's interesting because, of course, I went to the film thinking, okay, I've read this novel. I know it's an imperfect novel, even for a novel. You know, I mean, some novels are fine, but you know that they could only be novels. This one, I thought somebody can have a go at this story because there were some things that I didn't like with Frank Herbert. You had talked about Villeneuve, you know, turning the planet and the desert landscape into a character. I felt that Herbert also, you know, his strongest character, I think I said this in my Dune is Done video, the strongest character in his book was the planet Arrakis, but sometimes he shortchanged that character. In the book, the first 20% of the novel, you never see Arrakis. You even when you're on Arrakis, you never see Arrakis. There's 20% of the novel is spent indoors. And there's a lot of dialogue heavy scenes. People who've watched my video will know a lot of dialogue scenes that are really just info dumping to the reader. They're progressing the story a little bit, but not a great deal. So I agree with you on that. And it's funny that you talk about Villeneuve kind of cutting Paul's test in the desert short and not finishing it. And oddly enough, the second test, the Great Worm Ride, which we'll talk about later, that was where Frank Herbert kind of cut things off. He didn't stay with Paul and write the scene all the way through the test. He cut away, which disappointed me terribly. And so one of the things I loved about Dune 2 is they thought, no, we're going to do the worm ride from start to finish. And I think, was it at Dune 2 or was it at Dune 1 that there was applause at the end of the film?
No, end of June 2 there was
end
applause.
Of June 2. And I felt like joining in because I felt like you. I really felt that Villeneuve understood what was the most exciting thing about the novel. And I think what makes people love the novel, even with its faults, is that once they get, after the first 20%, when they're put out in the desert with Paul and Lady Jessica, it's captivating. That whole landscape is captivating. The Fremen are captivating. How they live, how they spend every day, where every single drop of water, even tears, aren't allowed. You can't grieve for people. So it's a very different culture from what we're used to. So I found that really, really exciting. Okay, so next question. We talked a lot about the film's casting, and I was interested in your reaction to Rebecca Ferguson's Lady Jessica, because you weren't crazy about her, were you?
I did find her very cold, particularly at the beginning. I mean, there was obviously love between her and Paul's father.
Mm.
But also, it obviously was a very structured society. The fact she was a concubine and not his wife, but there was no wife that you saw.
Mm.
So what was it because she was Bene Gesserit that they couldn't be married? Or I mean, I don't know. Like I say, I don't know what's kind of things coming from the book. But I just found her. I mean, Rebecca Ferguson does seem to play those women with that core of steel. I mean, I think she's quite well known as the assassin in Mission Impossible films.
Okay.
You know, with Tom Cruise, where
Uh-huh.
she has this core in her, and I think
Yeah.
she is cast a lot of the time with that. You know, I mean, obviously in those films she has to be somebody you believe will kill, and in this one she's playing somebody very driven who
Mm-hmm.
obviously has her own agenda, because going through the narrative of the film, she had a boy where her order are only supposed to have girls, so
Yeah.
she went against,
She defied
the
authority
motherhood
there.
sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And then she trained him up in the ways which again she was forbidden to do.
Mm-hmm.
So she's obviously not afraid of going against this sisterhood. But I just found it sometimes a little bit. She was too emotionless at times when you felt emotion was needed. I mean, but then on the other hand, you get the impression of the lioness, that she will do what she needs to do to protect her son.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but I think there was a lack of warmth. Maybe that is part of the portrayal. And like I say, she is sort of known for that type of
For that
role,
type
or
of
she
portrayal.
seems to be cast quite a lot. I mean, she's been in other things, but that's the role I think most people would know her from. So I found her difficult to warm to, and then obviously again in the second film where
Mm.
she becomes the Reverend Mother, and she's obviously got her agenda of getting Paul accepted by the Fremen
Mm-hmm.
as the chosen one. I mean, she is absolutely, you know, that is who he is. This is what she
Yes.
wants. But then she is also gaining power herself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not sort of directly, but she is, she's become, like say, the Reverend Mother of Arrakis, and she has got a lot of power and a lot of followers as well. So what she's still got another agenda we don't know about. And then obviously towards the end of the film we find out who her father was,
Yes.
and she turns out that she is a Harkonnen, so
She's a Harkonnen.
she's the other side. But the story, she says she did not know that until she went through the ceremony of the
Mm.
Waters of
Mm.
Life. So
Mm.
at this moment, there's nothing you've seen in the film that makes you doubt that. But then that does kind of make a bit more sense to her behaviour, and
Yeah.
maybe because of all the Harkins you see, there is no warmth, there is no love.
No.
It is all power.
It's all scheming.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
scheming and power and
Mm.
control. And if I want something, I'm going to get it, and I don't really care how I get
Yeah.
it or who
Yeah.
I squash to get to the end. Yeah, I don't know. Like I say, it might work out to be a very good bit of casting, and she is right. But I just found her, of all the characters, she's the one I found difficult to warm to. I won't say relate to, because obviously it's a circumstance that you can't relate to.
Yeah.
But I found her. I none of the situations I was sort of like, oh, what a shame. Oh, this is terrible for her. Like, just get on with it. Yeah.
That's interesting you should say it, because in the book she's ambivalent too. There is a lot. There are a lot of questions around Lady Jessica. Why doesn't the Duke make her his wife? In the film, none of the Bene Gesserit women are married to men that they hang around with, are they? Or they don't have any men. Whereas in the book, there are other Bene Gesserit women married into royal houses. So I think what's interesting is that Jessica becomes like the exception, that she isn't. There is also in Frank Herbert's novel, which isn't played out in Villeneuve's, she's suspected of being the one who orchestrated the Harkonnen attack on Arrakis, which causes the death of Duke Leto. So she's suspected of that. So much so that she's actually attacked by Gurney. Now I can't remember who plays Gurney in the film, but she's attacked by Gurney when he meets Paul again in the desert, because he's convinced.
Yeah, that's Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin, yeah. So Josh Brolin tries to attack Rebecca. Well, he doesn't. It's obviously not in the film.
Yeah.
But if they were being true to the book, he would attack Lady Jessica. Paul would have to get in between them and go, "What are you doing?" And he'd have to, help Gurney understand that his mother was not guilty.
I mean, that is not implied at all in the film. In the film, she is a victim as well as everybody else. The scene in the first film where they're in the aeroplane and they're gagged so she can't use the voice, and she's
which is true to
him to do. You know, she is physically at risk. So I don't think
and pregnant as well.
Yeah,
so,
but there's no indication that this is some mega double bluff or anything. She has no idea, and if you take the stories we've been told so far, she has no idea of a Harkonnen ancestry at all.
No, she doesn't. So you'd have to, I suppose, and this is always open to speculation because she doesn't know. I don't think she knows in the book either, but it's open to speculation just how much of her father is part of her, and you just don't really know. You finish the book as well thinking, has she got an agenda? And how big is it? How far-reaching is it?
That is definitely something that comes across in the film for me.
Stronger.
She has got this role for her son, but it's also what does she want?
Yeah.
Because she has defied from the beginning things that she's been trained up to do, and I can't imagine that the Bene Gesserit, the training is light and simple. I imagine it's very harsh. It's very demanding. So for her to have the strength of will to go against it, she's a strong person, but also I think I do believe she has.
But if she has that strength of will, then does she eventually turn into someone more evil? Does someone who at the moment looks more like on the protagonist side shift over, in the next movie and become the biggest antagonist? Maybe there's someone who has to be defeated in the same way. I'm totally speculating now, readers. I have not read the other books.
Same here.
Okay, but I'm wondering.
But I think as long as things go with her agenda, then that's the side she's on. That's how I feel. But I do think, it was Francesca Annis who played it in the David Lynch version. And again, I think it was, like you say, quite a controlled performance. But I just think this is more of a meatier role for an actress, which I think which is something we have discussed, how the female characters are definitely, they've got more of a role. They're more three-dimensional. I mean, Zendaya as Chani, I think she's great. I think she's really good. She's got that right mix of her and of the character, the right mix of the fighter, but also she's opened her heart up to somebody who could potentially have just betrayed her. By and saying he's going, I love you, but I'm going to marry the princess.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a lot.
Exactly. And you should see how that's handled in the book because Chani to me in the book is she could be anything. She could be a cardboard cutout. She hangs around with Paul. She sleeps with him. Okay, in the novel she becomes pregnant with his child and gives birth, but I'm kind of glad that Villeneuve moved that off, but we'll talk about that later. But at the end of the book, when Paul does make this decision to marry the Emperor's daughter, you just get no reaction. Herbert just doesn't go back to Chani and go, well, Chani, what do you think about this? Any feelings that you might have? Whereas I think Villeneuve's quite honest. I think he's creating an interesting situation, which we've talked about before, where, whereas in the novel, Paul it's always questioning what he's meant to be and what he's meant to do in the future. And that happens internally. And it's something that in a film would be so boring. And you said that the David Lynch film has a lot of internalized dialogue.
You have Carl McLachlan doing a lot of looking into the mid-distance, sort of tortured and this sort of voiceover. And its problem is now that's almost so much sort of cliche that it's difficult to watch seriously. Just all this...
and you can't do that now. Like people don't accept it.
No,
and so what I think is great is that Villeneuve takes Chani on the one hand, who wants Paul to be Paul, wants him to be Fremen and to be with her people, and yes, perhaps lead her people, but I don't think she's seeing it bigger than that.
She does not accept him as the Messiah. She sees him as his...
Oh, apologies, everybody. That was Amazon calling. So we had to take a very quick break. But you were saying about Chani.
Just that. Can we pause again?
No, absolutely. No, let's carry on. We'll edit it because we were talking about Chani being on the one hand wanting Paul.
Yeah, she loves Paul the man. She sees him as just as this person. She relates to him. She sometimes finds him a bit funny, a bit silly, but she does not see him as this Messiah, and she actually sees this thing of their sort of legends as a trap, as a
Yes.
way of controlling
Yes.
people. So she does not accept that. So when it comes to this betrayal of her,
It's a betrayal.
She's not stupid.
No.
You know, you can see her. I feel she understands it. Doesn't mean she's going to like it.
No.
And you know,
No.
the acting at the end, the performance by Zendaya, I think is very good because she
Mhm.
has that controlled rage where it's like, you bastard.
Mhm.
But I can kind of see why you're doing this, but it doesn't help.
Yeah.
And sort of going forward, again, you've got Florence Pugh playing the princess. She does not play Shrinking Violet.
No.
She does not play
No.
Little Wallflowers. So
Mhm.
that character will be interesting because then you get this triangle.
Yes. Oh God, yes.
You
I
have
didn't
the
think about that.
mother,
Yeah.
the lover, and the wife.
Yeah.
How and again,
And
there's
Paul
no
might get trapped.
exactly.
in
There's
between
no
that.
intimation
Yeah.
at the moment that Charlie is pregnant at all. That's not
No.
been referred to or even implied.
No.
And there's also another female character that has had an impact that we haven't seen yet, which is his sister, the unborn sister.
The unborn sister. Yeah.
Which
So
is
that's
almost
another
like,
pull
yeah,
as well.
that's
So it could end up being four ways. He might not know which direction to go in. But at the moment, he's got those opposites. He's got Lady Jessica pushing him to the role of Messiah.
Oh yes.
But also his unborn sister. They can speak to each other somehow, and through the water of life, God knows how that works. It doesn't have to happen in the novel that way, but it's still cool. She gets to speak to him. So yeah, it feels like the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other.
Yeah.
You've got Chani the angel saying, come on, be sensible, and Lady Jessica, who I do think there's a demonic.
She is
something
absolutely driven.
Scary.
She is obsessed. I think the picture you've selected is actually a very, very good one.
It is.
Because you've got the staring eyes, the defiance, obviously the markings on the face, which takes her beyond being a normal human being.
Yes.
It lifts her up to that level. But I just think the other interesting part is with Timothy Chalamet's portrayal of Paul. I'm not sure if he 100% believes it's the Messiah.
No,
because sometimes that facade has slipped.
Mm-hmm.
After the waters of life, he was very different to Chani, even though her tears literally helped save his life.
Yes.
But then there's the scene where he meets Gurney in the desert, and it's only like, oh, me old mate!
Yeah, me old mate. Oh, isn't it great again?
Oh, wow, the old boy's back again. And you're suddenly like, wow, you're not actually acting like the Messiah anymore. You let that one slip. So I'm wondering if he's going with it because he has these abilities, he has these powers, he's got his mum pushing him, but is there self-doubt in there, or is and like the political movement of like, okay, I've ended up with the emperor, if I kill the emperor, there's going to be trouble anyway, there's going to be a lot of trouble, so do the political thing, marry the princess, who I don't know how it works in the book, but she's savvy, she knows what's going on straight away, and she's like, yeah, we get married because that saves a lot of shit from going down.
But she might have her own agenda,
again,
and that might just complicate.
She has been shown, the clips we've seen in the film with her father, we will come on to, as a good tactician. Again, she's not just some token royal that's sitting there waiting to be married off to the next eligible lord. She's got a brain, she's got opinions, and he even takes her advice on things. So again, you've got this other strong one, but she twigged almost before everybody else. Was like, yeah, this is a good idea, because this is going to stop a lot of nastier things happening. But yeah, so no, I think it just going into it, and as we were saying before, female characters now, I think a lot of films are benefiting from having not too strong, because not too strong, that's the wrong word, but sometimes you can overemphasize, which unbalances things too much the other way. Where I think with this, you have a right balance of strong female characters, which, from what you said, is a vast improvement on the book.
Vast improvement, yeah. No, Herbert wasn't very good.
No.
With the women. God bless him. He tried, but I don't know if science fiction novels needed to.
No.
I think for science fiction, it still wasn't a girl's world.
No, I think. When were these novels written? Early 70s?
No, 60s?
late 60s. Yeah, this is still. It was very much a niche thing then
girls were still accessories
much,
to the men who went out and did stuff. We hadn't quite got to that point yet. So the movies really do improve, and they make the women far more complex. Okay, next question. Talk about your favorite characters.
My favourite character, I think, is Stilgar, played by Javier Bardem.
Okay, wow.
I mean, you've got an actor, very well renowned, has played a lot of heavies, and comes with a certain amount of
No Country for Old Men.
Well, No Country for Old Men, and also as the baddie in Skyfall.
Oh God, I've forgotten that. Yeah.
He's done a few romantic things. He was in Eat, Pray, Love and stuff like that. But he has that sort of air about him. But you accept him as a leader. He has, like I say, he has that gravitas. But what I liked about his character the most was he brought what I felt the film did need a little bit. Sometimes a lot with these very heavy epics and things like that. You sometimes just need a little bit of humour. And I found his character had that right balance. He was believable as a leader, but he absolutely accepts Paul as the chosen one. But you just got some funny moments, like we'll come on to the later on. But when Paul is going to do his first test of calling the worm, he's kind of like, don't try and impress anybody. Don't go for a big one and all that sort of slightly, guffaw sort of thing. Yeah. But then there's other scenes where he's sort of saying to his friend, he is the Messiah, he is the chosen one, he's the leader. And whatever Paul does, even if he denies it, he's like, see, he is. And it did. Yeah. It was some of it literally was, he's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy, just went straight through my head. And you had this flashbacks to Life of Brian. I mean, there's the scene in Life of Brian where they've followed Brian home and they're all outside his house going, tell us what to do, you're the Messiah. And he's going, no, I'm not. And they're going, that's just what the Messiah would say. Yes. And I did, but it didn't jar. It worked. It was almost like somebody had done that knowingly. They had just come up with this little bit and go, there's just these nice little parallels. But for me, he had a lightness of touch to his character that when it came to the battle scenes and everything like that, you're like, I'd follow you into battle. I absolutely would. And I know you would give your all for your people. Yes. But then he also has this quite endearing fanaticism that he
There's two words you don't use.
I know. I know.
But that endearing fanaticism.
But I just found he showed a vulnerability that, like, he so desperately wanted to believe that this skinny little boy that he most probably could knock out without even noticing was the saviour. And maybe I don't know, this is pure hypothetical here, but maybe, like I say, he's been this leader of this people and they are living this really crazy existence, like say draining dead bodies of water and that what they do with their victims. He might be tired of leading and he's like, I want somebody else to come and take this on for me. But whatever happened, he accepted. But I just found his character very rounded. He wasn't just there for his part of the story. I mean, most of the characters are rounded. I'm not saying that.
But he wasn't just fanatic.
He wasn't.
I love how you got the two balanced. Like he has two sides to him.
Yeah, he's like, I'm the leader and I will do this. And there's the scene at the end of the first film where Lady Jessica and Paul are captured by the Fremen, and they're basically like, well, we're going to kill him and you can work out how I did mine for Lady Jessica. Mm-hmm. But then there's a fight and they're like, okay, this is by our rules. So if you beat this person in combat, and there's a nobility there as well. Because imagine when you're living in such a harsh terrain, you have to have rules, or everybody would just they would fracture everybody.
And that's in the book. So those the rules of that fight were that is true to the novel. I must admit though, the novel doesn't give Stilgar quite that same fatherly. I did like that what Javier Bardem brought was a kind of fatherly or uncleness.
I did wonder at some point, was he Charlie's father? I mean, I just the way he was, but then I think it was just the way he is. No, but like you say, he definitely
I'll have to check that.
Yeah, but no, you're right. He had that. I think that's what his character. When I came away from it, I thought that's the character. Again, going to somebody I could warm to.
Yeah.
where I couldn't relate to Jessica, where with him you think like you are having to, fight everything every day just to survive.
Yeah.
And then you get these people that just come and like, yeah, we want some stuff off your planet, and so we're just going to take it and stuff you. Obviously there's colonial overtones here and all that sort of stuff, but we're not going down that road on this one. But but he's having to fight. He's having to fight to keep his people together, and so I just found that maybe there was this like, oh, maybe there's somebody else that can take this away from me.
Yeah.
I'll be their foot soldier. I'll be their captain, but somebody else can make the decisions. But I do think his character genuinely does believe. But like I said, I just found
that makes him open to hurt, though, doesn't it? If something finally goes really wrong, at what point will
he crack? Is there going to be? Will there be a betrayal?
Which would be really heartbreaking.
And I think he would not take it well.
No.
But no, I think that's why I particularly liked his character above some others. Like really like Johnny, and some of the other characters. And other characters have got potential, like the princess. But it was just something about him. He was very, very rounded. Not that there was those slight comedy, soft touches, which I thought he brought to the role, which made it far more three-dimensional than maybe it could have been. Like here's the leader, here's the fight. Got a tough guy. You've got somebody like him. That's what you get. But he just brought an extra depth to it. I felt
he did, absolutely. And I was thinking too. You were also mentioning the Emperor, because the Emperor hardly makes any appearance in the book. And to be fair, I therefore had no issue myself with the Emperor in the film, because he pretty much did the same thing. He just kind of appeared when it was necessary, and then we did what had to be done. But I know there's been some criticism of Christopher Walken playing his role, and you had an opposite opinion about that, which I thought was interesting.
I actually thought, no, that's right, it's Christopher Walken. He's going to be the Emperor. I totally get that. I mean, we had discussed this, because I think Mark Commode had an issue with it, and I went, no, because I think, I don't know if this is the term, but I felt, no, you've got shorthand casting there. You see the character, you see the actor, and you're like, I know you're somebody. You're somebody of power, of authority, because they've cast an actor of that repute, of that a face that's known.
So in other words, Walken is kind of, I hate to say wheeled on, but
it's kind of,
kind of as a signal.
Christopher Nolan, obviously the director of Oppenheimer, many of his films he had a small bit part for Michael Caine. Now Michael Caine is another one of those actors. You kind of know what you're going to get. They act at a certain level, they bring a certain gravitas, they bring a certain dignity to roles, even sometimes in 2 or 3 minute scenes, and that's all they have. And I think with this, with Christopher Walken, I mean, you've got like his very famous section in Pulp Fiction, which is basically a monologue to a small boy. About how he.
There's a film I haven't seen, everybody. So
people that know this film will know how he looked after this boy's father's watch while they were in prison. I'm not going into any more detail, but if you know, you know. But it's he's captivating. He's basically looking at you, but you're mesmerised. Or even like in Sleepy Hollow, where he plays the headless horseman, obviously before he loses his head, but he doesn't even speak. But again, it's Christopher Walken, so you accept it. So I actually. I felt that for me that absolutely worked, because if it had been an actor that you didn't know, it'd be like, who are you? I mean, an example.
So you think like the director bringing Walken on because he knew it was only going to be a small part, so he thought, how can I make the biggest impact?
It's like at the end of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, when Richard the Lionheart turns up and it's Sean Connery, and you're like, before you even see him, you hear his voice.
There's a regal.
You're Scottish, you're Scottish Richard the First, but you don't care. But it works. You're like, you're a king. I don't need to be told you're the king. You've got to be the king because you're Sean Connery. And I think that's how it's worked. I mean, the flip side, if you don't mind if I digress for a second, but when Star Wars The Force Awakens came out, obviously there was all the big fuss about the casting, Harrison Ford being back, Carrie Fisher being back and everything. And then they built up the new bad of the character of Kylo Ren. And, for the first, how much of the film is going around with the mask on, sort of like wannabe Darth Vader, and, sort of all the heavy breathing and all this struggling and everything. And then you find out, obviously, he's he's Han Solo's son, and it all gets, to Darth Vader, his granddad, and he takes his mask off, and you're ready to be wowed by who's underneath this. This character's been built up,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, come on, wow me, this is going to be somebody really wow. And it was Adam Driver. And no disrespect to Adam Driver.
Adam Driver fans, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
You might need to switch off now.
No disrespect, but I just felt at that point in his acting career, he did not have the impact. I mean, there was physically the cinema I was in, there was this audible when this mask was revealed.
Yeah.
And again, nothing to do with his performance,
No.
but that was something that needed.
People were expecting a face.
Yeah, that they were expecting, like, I don't know,
face.
Benedict Cumberbatch or somebody like that.
Yeah.
Somebody that you'll
Someone
go, whoa,
yeah.
I think Adam Driver now, it would be different because he is well known and he is respected. I think it was just a bit too early in his career, and again, that is not a reflection on his performance. It was just, it needed that impact casting, I think, for the character, and you just felt like it was just some kid running around with his granddad's war helmet, going, oh look, I'm a bad guy. It lost, the character lost from that. I felt it.
With Walken, you think?
Yeah, you knew you had this.
You would bring on that face, so that people went, yes.
Yeah, I can tell. Well, if it had been a non-well-known actor, you'd just been like, oh, because he had such few lines, you needed that physical presence.
Yeah.
To be, oh yeah, you're the emperor, because he wasn't dressed grandly. I think if I remember, it's long black robes, and his hair sticking up. And, but I felt that actually was a very clever piece of casting, because it just cut through a lot of exposition, and you were like, yeah, you're the emperor.
Yeah, see, now that's something interesting that you can't do with a novel, isn't it? You can't. The emperor literally did make an arrival at the end of the book, and you just thought, well, here he is, but he's already been deposed. Okay, well, bye, emperor. And it did, you're right. It did help that even I, who don't know actors' names, right? You guys know how I am with films. Nevertheless, I recognized that face, and I thought, I've seen that face a lot. And somehow,
so you knew because of that, this character had to be somebody important.
Or I just accepted a certain, as you say, if Michael Caine came on, there's actors that come on that you just think they're kind of like the old statesman of the silver screen.
I think Robert De Niro is kind of falling into that category as well.
Yeah.
And you sort of know kind of you know what to expect, and that again, that's not a criticism of their acting style, but it's like I say, it's the gravitas, it's the history of the roles and everything, that they bring it with you, and you're like, okay, well, this character's important. We need to pay attention to this character because they've cast this person in this role. So it's not going to be just somebody shuffling in the background. This person needs your attention.
Okay.
I thought it was actually very clever.
I don't know if I had a favorite character, but and we have talked about this. I really liked Timothée Chalamet as Paul, and then there's two reasons. There's a description in the novel at the beginning of Herbert's novel when the Reverend Mother comes to give Paul his test. She says she's looking in on him as he's sleeping, and she remarks to Lady Jessica, he's so small for his age. Jessica has to apologize and say, well, he is 15, and she said, well, he should be taller than that. And then even at the end of the novel, I can't remember the exact words the Emperor uses as he's thinking and observing Paul, but I think he calls him something like a little thin stripling. And I thought, yeah. And you show me pictures of McLachlan, and I've just thought, what?
I mean,
I don't know who that is, but that is not Paul Atreides.
No, I mean, the irony, we looked at it, and actually the actors were of a very similar age. Yeah. But McLachlan just looks older. Yeah. He's more thick-set.
His physique is different.
He's very, where Timothy does look like, particularly at the beginning of the first film, a slightly stroppy, entitled teenager.
Kid. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that his actual progression is believable. Definitely.
Yeah. Maybe more so because he looks an unlikely Messiah. He doesn't look masterful. He looks, I suppose we could go back to Life of Brian and say he's like, you? Okay.
Yeah, you really don't.
Who would know? Only someone with faith can believe that Timothée Chalamet is a Messiah. Okay, now we're going to talk about our favorite scene. Guess what it is? Jackie?
Well, it could be.
Oh.
Like, it's the one we actually got a sneak peek to when we went to see the reissue of Dune 1, when they brought out, obviously, to get everybody ready for the second film.
Yeah.
When we went to the cinema, we were told by the ushers, stay till the very end.
Yep.
There's a little sneak peek. So you're like, oh, lovely, do that. And what they showed was the scene of Paul riding the worm for the first time. And I didn't realise, obviously, as I've said before, I'm not familiar with the book at all, that this is not in the book, which to me it seemed, the sort of the bulk of it is not in.
The bulk of it is not in.
The actual act of it is not in.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, this is one of the tests, and if this had been missing from the film, along with the scene we spoke about right at the beginning, I would have felt very cheated, because it's like, you're giving him these tests and we're not seeing them.
And
so how is he proving himself to you?
Well, then you've got to imagine the book, because in the book there's no Goa in the wilderness test at all. That's an addition. But there is this worm ride test, and Herbert does this bizarre thing where he lets the worm come so close that you think, okay, now what? What the hell? Then he cuts, and for 12 pages you go back into one of his interior scenes, which he loved too much. He loved interiors where people would have dialogue for pages and pages, and he had 12 pages of dialogue, a scene that could have happened anywhere else in the book. And then he returns you, and by the time he returns you, Paul he's up, and it's pretty much, if you were cutting it in the film, you'd cut it from the time Paul turned and ran along the edge of the dune, but hadn't jumped onto the worm.
You use it as a piece of tension.
Yeah. When you cut it before he jumps, and then you don't return again until all the Fremen are applauding, and in the distance you just see Paul and the worm go by. That's what Frank Herbert did. It was so. I was really angry, because it annoyed me that he seemed to understand in some scenes how important it was to stay with the character. We don't get so much of this in the film. The biologist, the ecologist who helps Jessica and Paul escape, of course, they die in the desert. In the film, in the novel, you stay with that ecologist while they die. It's a dramatic scene. Of course, it's interior, so that's probably why you wouldn't put it in a film. But they know how they're dying, because they stay with the character through what is a traumatic piece of time, and I felt that was important to do, and I thought, yes, Herbert did it right then, but here he really missed a trick, because that worm ride, and I think Villeneuve knew that that's what everybody who read the book, that they had to do all the imagining for Herbert, because Herbert just thought, nope, won't be showing you exactly how. I'll explain. It all got explained in dialogue before it happened. That's boring. And then, of course, he cut the action. And that was the one biggest thing that I can't believe his editors didn't pull him up on. But back to you.
But no, I liked it. I think the other scene that was most impactful as well is the fight with Frey Ruther, when you first meet him in like the sort of monochrome Romanish amphitheatre.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the difference from all the warm golds and hues of Arrakis and the desert ride and everything, to this stark, bleached black and white.
No landscape at all.
Yeah, nothing. Very industrial. Very sort of felt to me a bit like Fritz Lang's Metropolis.
Yeah.
Very industrial. You most probably, there's not a shred of green anywhere. Imagine everything's synthetic and synthesized and whatever. And I just felt that was a good contrast to all the nature, because however harsh Arrakis is, it's still nature.
Yes.
And then you've got this very sort of controlled environment. But the fight scene where he's brought on, and you could see normally his victims are so drugged or already wounded that it's not even a challenge. But the fact he relishes the challenge, and it's the test from his uncle.
Yes.
Yeah. I found that very, very visually arresting. It really did sort of like, wow, it just totally pulled you out of one world and put you in another, and you were very much, you're not in Kansas anymore. You are really in a different. There's no affection. There's no love.
No.
They live under fear.
Yes.
Being controlled by fear. And I thought that would be visually, I found that a very, very well constructed scene, and obviously echoes to Roman theatres and
Yeah.
gladiators and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But I did think that was also a very good scene.
Interesting, the color contrast, isn't it? You Harkonnens are black and white.
Yes.
Arrakis is shades of gold and brown, and then you've got Caladan where it's perpetually raining. You don't see much of Caladan.
No.
Caladan is just this lovely, sweet planet where there's rainfall and oceans, and it's like some paradise maybe that's the thing. It is a paradise that Paul leaves to go out into the desert, and so the whole stay on Arrakis then becomes a test in the desert, which is it's interesting. We could really get mythological.
We could. I mean, that was another thing as I was saying about the lightness when they got the conversations with him and Chani, and she was asking about, Rainey was saying about waterfalls from the skies, and you can go and swim in this water, and she's like, get out of here.
Yeah.
I thought that
fairy tale.
But that was almost like a couple of teenagers chatting. That was very sweet. You know, but I'm sorry, I know we sort of digressed there, but that was that. I just remembered that thing.
We're allowed digression.
Yeah. But I think, again, visual shorthand to you, this is such a different artificial environment compared to, and even with the spice, when you see that in the planet, it glitters, it's sparkly, it's pretty.
It is pretty.
It doesn't look, it's not.
It creates a special kind of desert beauty, doesn't it? Yeah. Which I do think Herbert did capture in the book. Not enough, though. I felt that, I mean, he didn't describe the Harkonnen planet much at all. I do remember the stadium scene, but I don't recall that he described the architecture so that you got a sense of, I don't know, that because the stadium almost seemed conical. So the seats were wide and they narrowed down to the performance area at the bottom. And I didn't get any sense of what shape it was in the book. That's something that I wished Herbert had maybe spent more time on. Sometimes he concentrated on physical details that were neither here nor there, and they didn't really matter. But he did do some scenes in the desert, but I felt a few more wouldn't have hurt. Just some better description. But Villeneuve just makes up for it. He just knows that it's the scenery that, as you say, that the planet is a character, and that's definitely true in both film and novel. Okay, and our last question: where is it going to go in the third film? Do you think?
Oh, they set it up nicely. You had the battle at the end, and then Paul taking over from the Emperor, agreeing to marry the daughter. Poor Chani going off in the huff, and you see her left on the planet as they go off to paradise. But I personally think, obviously, they've set it up that the other families aren't going to be happy. But I think the major driver for this will be Jessica's intentions, because she has been the driver behind this. Without her pushing Paul, he would not be in this situation. So where does she want to go? I still think he doesn't 100% believe he's the Messiah, but he's been put in this position, so the only way to survive is to go with it. You've got the unborn sister. And what impact is she going to have on the sort of the whole environment and the whole dynamic? I think, because we said, you're not going to only have the mother, you're going to have the wife, you're going to have the lover
girlfriend
and the sister.
Yeah.
And if there is a child between him and Chani as well, you've got a lot of he's got a lot of domestic shit to deal with.
That's a good word for
big domestic stuff
to deal with.
I think that's where it will go. I think a lot of it is because she has been in control. Now, I cannot remember, at the end of the film, do you see her leaving the planet with...
Yes. With the last scene, she goes and calls a worm, doesn't she? Do you remember? Chani calls a worm, and you think, okay, and she stands waiting for it, and she's trying not to cry, because, of course, she's trained not to. But that is the last scene. But I can't think that she'll stay away, or even if she stays away, I feel like Paul will have to come looking for her, because you remember, you talked about it, her tears revived him, and I think, therefore, whatever exists between them is too strong for Paul to function without her.
I think some of his attitude towards her was him sort of almost cruel to be kind. It's like, I know something's coming, because obviously he has these future visions, and I think he's maybe even realised that I'm going to have to make this choice at some point. If I start slightly pushing you away, it might not be as hard. Of course, he's got that totally wrong. But
maybe,
I think that might be some, because his behaviour does change to her almost like that. But then he tells her he loves her just before he going to get married.
Mm.
But no, I do think. I mean, I'm assuming that the paradise they're going back to is the is his planet, the planet of the Atreides, with green
Oh,
and water. I mean,
that's
that's where I assumed paradise
okay.
would be.
I don't know. I don't know because, of course, the book doesn't leave you. It doesn't take you any further than the film does. But I think the thing about the book is that Ayla, the unborn daughter, is born. Not
Yeah.
only born, but she gets to about the age of 3 or 4.
But she actually has, from what you told me in the book, she has quite an important role with killing the Baron
Yeah,
Harkonnen.
she kills the Baron, but she's become the reason I'm really glad Villeneuve moved her off stage was because she vies for the stage, the front stage with Paul.
Mm.
She becomes so that you're like, well, who is this? And like I'm confused because I thought it was quite clear what Paul was becoming, but now we got her muscling in. And so, to be truthful, I was really glad that the film chose to change the time scale such that that baby still isn't born by the end of the film. I thought good because she's too strong a personality not to have a major role. So I think whatever the next film is, that baby's going to be around and it's going to be an exceptional baby. It's going to be a baby that has seen the future and multiple pasts from the womb. So she's probably going to come out talking.
Mm.
In fact, I'm pretty sure that that was what freaked the discussion that interrupted Paul's worm ride was a discussion between the Fremen and Lady Jessica about her daughter, about how she was scaring the heck out of everybody in amongst the Fremen because she could do things that no child her age should know how to do.
Mm.
And I did feel that again she was just muscling in on it. It's like just a second, whose story is this? And I feel like Villeneuve thought, yeah, let's clean this up. Whose story is
Yeah.
this right now? We can bring Ayla in later, and she can have a role. She can become something because we've lost the Baron, we've lost Fade Rayutha, so two of our main antagonists are gone. The Emperor is, for all effects and purposes, he seems sidelined. I don't know how
we
that
don't
will
know.
play,
But again, with the
yeah.
casting and everything, I'm wondering, is there something else
Yeah.
going to happen?
So you need new antagonists and
Mm.
protagonists. So I think the third film might make use of Ayla, but also of course Chani. I can't help but thinking she's pregnant and doesn't yet know, or does and hasn't told Paul, or does and has told Paul, but that wasn't dramatized in the film. Either way, I think she will go into the desert, have her son, and I don't know what will happen then, but that could complicate things, as you say, and that would be interesting because all those characters, every single one plays on Paul, and challenges whether he can be convicted.
Whatever the
is.
dimensions are, he's at the center.
Yeah.
So he's going to be pulled in a lot of directions. So that will be interesting to see. And I think
who his new enemies will be.
But going to sort of casting and acting, I've not seen him in too much, but I've obviously seen him in the first film, and I've seen him in Wonka. And the performance in Wonka is so different and so endearing and so warm. You're thinking, I think whatever gets thrown at you as an actor, I think you are going to deal with it. You are going to be able to portray it. There isn't going to suddenly be like, oh yeah, you can do the stroppy teenager or the wannabe hero. But if things get a bit more, let's say, domestic.
Yeah.
But
can he also be tender?
Yeah, can he be tender
and vulnerable?
Yes, which I think we've seen hints of that but only really with Chani. I think. And he's matey with his sort of soldier buddies. But I think it will be.
That's how you put that. Yeah.
It will be interesting to see, where this goes. But I think the dynamics, and I think it's more, with the characters coming in, is going to be how the story. So, will the next stage, is that based on any of the other books? Do we know?
Think Dune Messiah will be the book that Villeneuve uses now. I haven't read that, so that will be the one thing that I wasn't going to read the other books, everyone. I was just going to leave it at Dune, but the movie is too enticing, so I probably will read Dune Messiah just so I can think, okay, now let's watch. Because what I love about films when they do tie in with books is watching how a director takes the material in a book and then goes, okay, but this is a book, and that's a different art form. And I've never had a situation where it's bugged me how a film has interpreted a book. Most times I like how films are done because I always see them as they are the art form they are. And sometimes I think what sometimes readers want is a book just kind of moved onto screen. I thought it won't work quite
because
like that.
you're talking of a film that was most probably going to be 13 hours, which
Well,
is
yeah,
not
that
gonna
too,
work.
that too. But also, you would have a lot of inaction. A film is designed for action, for visuality, whereas a novel more for hearing voices in your head.
But also,
You know.
again, with cinema, and again, we saw the IMAX production, the sound.
Oh,
The sound was
that
amazing.
soundtrack
I mean,
shook your whole body.
oh, it did. It literally, you could feel the vibrations, and this
Yeah.
wasn't 4DX or anything
That
like
made
that.
you like
It
a
was,
worm.
Yeah, it was
didn't it?
purely, it was purely
Wow,
the, you
yeah.
know, just IMAX cinema, but you know, the vibrations and things like that. That was an added dimension to it, which did sort of enhance the viewing experience. But that made quite an impact as well.
It's cool.
I think, yeah.
Whew. Well, everybody, you know what I've got to do next is edit all this.
Good luck.
That's going to be my challenge. But, you know, by all means, everyone, if you've tuned in and you've seen the film and read the books, we'd love to hear your thoughts, your speculations in the comments. I'm going to be back on Thursday with a new fiction review. But until then, it is ta-ra, sadly, from Georgie. Ta-ra, Georgie.
Bye.
Bye. And also, goodbye from me. We're going to do a wave and a fade out. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.